Welcome into King Whale's album review party. Today we are reviewing a very special album. I think this is like one of the first times we've been able to review an album and like a concert at the same time because we just went to
Mhm.
one. But we're going to be reviewing Silversun Pickup's latest album. My mind just went totally blank for some reason. I don't
Yeah,
even
yeah, I
know
was
why.
wondering. It's
Yeah.
like,
What is he doing?
you got this,
It's
man. I believe in you.
it's been an interesting day. We're reviewing Silversun Pickup's latest album, Physical Thrills, and we went to see them at the House of Blues in Orlando last night because I am back in Florida right now. As it turns out, I spent all my money on this podcast and it didn't go so well, so I had to move back in with my mom. So, we're back in Florida now.
We're making do with what we can.
With what we got. So first, I got to introduce my amazing co-host who was able to go to the concert with me last night. Ty, say hello to everybody. So good to have you on again.
I only agreed to do this podcast so that we could go to rock concerts together. That was the only,
That
and
was
it's
the
finally
condition.
paying off. It's paying off because I
Mm-hmm.
got you to go to one last night.
Right? And it's so crazy because I'm going to be back in Charlotte on Wednesday.
Mhm.
And because I work for Live Nation, I'm going to be working the Silver Sun Pickup Show in Charlotte. So it'll be very interesting. Hello Mary opened for them, and I still need to tell them that you absolutely loved them. So I'll have to pass that along when I see them
Yes,
again in
they
Charlotte.
they killed it. They were great. Never heard of them before,
Yeah.
but
Maybe we'll do one of their albums soon. That would be pretty cool.
I'm an instant fan now. They were
Yeah.
the drummer, I don't know any of their names. The drummer was whistling in the middle of this hard rock noise breakdown session.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going crazy in the middle of the concert because I'm like, is this tinnitus that's setting in from going to too many live shows and
Yeah.
my
What's
eardrums
happening?
have given out? Or is somebody whistling right now? And I looked over, and sure enough, she was whistling in the middle of the song. It was great.
And that probably made you feel a whole lot better, like realizing, like, okay, I don't have tinnitus.
Yeah,
So, like, it was twofold, you know what I
you're
mean? Like, it
right.
was cool. And it was like, I don't have tinnitus. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how
Thank
much of it
God.
was like it was actually cool or just the relief
Mm-hmm.
of not having a medical issue to deal with.
Emergency to deal with. Yeah, yeah. And I noticed the name that you chose today was Gold Moon Put Downs. And if you can't figure out why he chose that name, you'll find out at the end of the episode. We'll have to delve into it because it took me a
I
minute to
think you
realize it.
can. I
I think
I
most
trust
people probably will, but I stared at it for a good 5 minutes and I was like, Ty, why'd you do that? And you're like,
uh,
really?
to our two audience members, I trust you. I trust you that you can figure out why I called myself Gold Moon Put Down.
So let's talk about this album, Physical Thrills. What did you like about it? What do you think worked about it? And what do you think? I mean, if there's anything that you didn't like about it.
So this is I believe their sixth or seventh album that they've released. And it is quite solid for the subgenre that Silver Sun Pickups kind of lie in. This is a band I really love. They walk this line, at least more with their early works, between this punk and shoegaze. They walk like this thin line kind of between them, and it was very interesting, very moody music. And Physical Thrills, I gotta say, has some of the weaker moments of their discography for me.
Mm-hmm.
Their sound has kind of tapered off a little bit. It doesn't have that much of like this rawness that I appreciate in some of their earlier works, even in 2019's Widow Weeds, the album that came before it, felt like it had a little more grit to it that Physical Thrills did not. And so I'm not sure if it's an attempt of them trying to change their sound to approach a more acoustic sound, as some of the songs on this album kind of have an acoustic
Mm-hmm.
inspiration to. And none of it is certainly bad, but it is not the appeal that drew me to the band to begin with.
Yeah, it feels very and I guess especially with the concert too, this was not a Physical Thrills tour. Like if they were touring to
Right.
promote this specific album, the concert probably would have been very different. But I just
Mhm.
remember because we listened to the album on the way to the concert, to like
Mhm.
get ready as one does. And it feels like you said, a little bit less rawness. It feels like it's kind of mellowed out almost. Um, and it's like it still feels like it's in their style, but it just is very different from a lot of the songs that became popular, that became hits. Like when we were like when I was listening to the album, I was like, oh, okay, this is like an indie rock band, kind of alternative rock. I didn't really
Mhm.
get like a strong like hard rock like vibe from them. And then when we went to the concert and they were playing some of their hits, I'm like, oh, this is a rock band. This is like a rock. Because again, I should probably preface, I don't know much about Silversun pickups at all.
Mhm.
My wife knows a lot more about them. But I've been trying to branch out, enjoying new music, and I figured this was a good place to start. And yeah, so I think yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not as raw, it doesn't feel as intense. It feels a little bit more mellowed out. And like I said, that might be the style that they're going for. Maybe in the story that they're trying to tell with this album. And again, and this might just be like the aspect of performing and having all the energy. But even like my favorite song by them is Circadian Rhythm.
Mhm.
Because that's one of the early songs that you actually introduced me to, and I actually really liked it, and I still listen to it quite often. But even when he performed that, like I said, partly it might just be from being in the venue, having all the energy and all that stuff. But even that song sounded very different than their album studio recording. When they performed Sticks and Stones off of their latest album, Physical
Mhm.
Thrills, it sounded very different. Like it's hard to explain, but I don't know. It just feels like I said, the concert, and maybe that's part of like they want their concerts to remain really edgy, and they were just doing a new sound with like Physical Thrills. But I agree, it's not a bad album by any means. I think it's just, um, I think the perspective of Silver Sun fans, like people that know Silver Sun pickups, they're gonna have a much more interesting perspective because it's a different sound than
Yeah.
yeah.
I think for all of their music, this is definitely a band that is really great. They're all amazing performers because
Hmm.
their sound, it feels like it's built to be experienced live. Like Silver Sun is a band that I think they sound really great on a record and even a live album, but it's just not the same. Like this is a band that needs to be listened to with speakers that feel like they're about to blow out
Yep.
because the distortion is so like is so turned up and moody that it just like it hits you like a wave in the ocean. Like that's the best I can do to try to
Yeah. No,
describe
that's
the
right.
appeal of it. And
Yeah.
and in that way, their albums have always felt to me like advertisements to their performances live.
Hmm.
And while I think Physical Thrills may have songs that are weaker compared to some of their other recorded material, the hits that they'll often play at a live performance still sound really great live. Like you mentioned, Sticks and Stones is really good. Scared Together is a song that I don't really like recorded. It sounds too like stadium rock for me
Hmm.
with like the guitar and the like wow 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 just
Yeah.
constantly with like the heavy pauses. I don't know. It
Uh-huh.
just doesn't work for me recorded. But live, I think the song is great. And then other tracks like System Error or Empty Nest or my personal favorite from this album, Alone on a Hill, sound really good live. And then when they're performed, especially Alone on the Hill, where it's Nikki's show, the bassist, she
Hmm.
takes over, not the lead vocalist, but she takes over. That's
Hmm.
her song that she's singing. It it's so peaceful and it's so emotional and it's great.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like, as an artist, like if you were trying to decide, what did you want to like I do a lot of lo-fi music, right? And lo-fi music is really more meant to be streamed and listened to rather than performed. Because when you're
Mhm.
performing it, if you get hype with your lo-fi music, it's not really lo-fi anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's supposed to be chill and mellow for a reason. You
Mhm.
listen to it while you're studying and stuff like that. Does
Mhm.
great on streaming. Not really the best for performing unless you're like way in the background and people are just supposed to have you like kind of as background music.
Right.
With them, it's the exact opposite. Like their music needs to be performed. You need to have people going crazy in the crowd, not necessarily mosh pitting, but you need to have a bunch of people like vibing off of the energy of each other. And for them, and for any band, for any artist, it is a much better business decision to have your concerts be the more I guess profitable or like that. Like if that's your main draw, live performances, that's where you want to be because concerts make more money and have less production costs than albums. You will make
Mm.
way more money from doing live shows and selling tickets than you do from albums. A lot of even famous artists, they make like the production costs for the album doesn't even end up outweighing the sales. Sometimes it's like you're good to break even, and if you do that, great. That's more incentive to get people to come to our concerts. So like you said, the albums kind of serve more as like a like even if they lose money on their albums, because again, that can't happen because production costs are so incredibly high for studio
Mhm.
time and all that stuff. You make it back in the concerts because the concerts are where artists, bands, where all the money is really made, especially when it's a good as the concert they put on last night.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like they know their audience, they know what their fans are there for, and through time and experience. Because I started the first time I ever saw them live was back in 2016. I think 2016, right after Better Nature had come out. So the album that had Circadian Rhythm on it,
Hmm.
right when that first came out is when I first started seeing them live. And even the short time since then, their sound feels like it's like aging like wine, like for their live performances.
Hmm.
They know exactly how to get across the emotion that they're going for. Their artistry really takes off
Yeah,
live.
and they played for 2 hours, which again, I work a lot of concerts for any band for all the stuff Brian Albert is doing with his voice and all the energy. That is crazy. That is
Hmm.
very long and very impressive. And I'm not gonna mention what I was gonna say because that would be a spoiler in case anyone is going to a concert. But it is a very like that takes like he has to have not only professional training but like he has some kind of like medicine or professional ways to cope with the strain on his voice because that's a lot for any voice to handle, especially tour night after night. um and when you mentioned that they know their audience, because you mentioned Nikki earlier, it reminded me because we went with Ty's brother last night
Mm.
and my wife. We all got to hang out together. And he Kyle told me about one time when he went to go see them, and I think I don't know if it was his first time seeing them or like maybe his second time, but they
Hmm.
were opening for Third Eye Blind. So
Hmm.
most people there were there for Third Eye Blind. They didn't really know who Silversun Pickups was. It was, before they kind of grew to become headliners. And so like as they were walking on the stage, Kyle goes like, "Hey, Nikki!" And apparently she turned on the stage and was like, "Hey, I see you." And it was like, I wonder if she, and I was like, "Man, you should have said, do you remember me?" You know what I mean? Like, be like, "Nikki, I'm back." And but you could tell like that they really do connect with their audience because throughout the show, like everyone was like sharing hearts with each other, and she was telling them how much that she appreciates them. Brian was talking about how much he appreciates them. And it felt very authentic, and especially, for a fan that, like I said, became a fan of them when they were opening for another band and then watched them grow and continued. It's
Hmm.
probably really, really real, for people like Kyle, because like you said, like a lot of the artists that I liked were kind of already big before I started liking them, like, Lupe Fiasco. He was already at his peak when I discovered him, stuff like that. I haven't
Hmm.
really had a chance to like see an artist grow and get bigger and being like one of the day ones, like when they were opening up and you were the only one there for their show or something like that. So
Hmm.
that in and of itself was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Hmm.
think something that I want to point out to you and maybe any of um, our audience listeners here today, we're talking about physical thrills, but if this is your first time listening or hearing of Silver Sun Pickups, if you're a fan of the band, so glad that there's other fans. Let us
Yeah.
know what you think of physical thrills. But for those who have not, I do not recommend this as a starting point to really capture their sound. If I was to recommend anything, it would be two of their early albums, Carnivas or Swoon. Either of those, I think, would be very good starting points because I think those best capture this bit of rawness
Hmm.
that when they were more early on in their career, still like refining and capturing their sound, there's a beauty to the unrefined bit that they have.
Yeah.
And so I recommend those two as great starting points.
Hmm.
Tonight they played, or last night they played a bunch of songs from those albums that I have not heard live, like the Royal We off of Swoon, which was amazing. And it sounds so great live. It's like it's a different song when it's
Hmm.
performed. And um, so for anyone that we can try to convert into fans here, start there, and then the second they're anywhere near you, their tickets are usually like reasonable
Hmm.
for the venue or the location. So find where you can go and make this a concert to try to go to because this is something that transcends genre a little bit. Like this is just a solid performance. Whether
Hmm.
you like this category of alt rock yourself, if you just like live performances, these guys put on a great show.
They really do. And like, and again, I work concerts for this is part of my job. I've been to some bad concerts.
Mhm.
I've worked some show where I'm like, objectively, whether you like this genre or not, this is trash. I don't
Yeah.
understand why you're a nationally touring artist right now. So I know exactly what you mean. I've been to some bad performances, and this
Mhm.
definitely in no way was that. And like, even the even the keyboardist, I don't think it was on purpose. Like there was a moment where they were playing this one song, and I think either he started playing the lick too fast or something, and like he just stopped because like everyone was snapping. I like what I honestly think. I think he was surprised at how well the crowd was keeping. I'm about to spoil it. Okay, well, if you haven't seen the concert, maybe exit this part of this, but this is like what specifically happened in Orlando. So in Orlando, he Brian had the crowd start snapping along to the next song. And like as a performer, it's always very dangerous to do that because like for me, I'm terrible at keeping time, absolutely horrible, and I'm a musician. Like usually if your drummer's not keeping time, there's a very good chance that like it can fall apart very quickly. Even if you're having the audience do it, it's like it can be very hard. Like when you get people to clap and like eventually it falls off, and if that's what your band is working on, it could all fall apart. But I think he was just surprised because everyone was keeping the rhythm so well, and I
Mhm.
don't think he was anticipating. And I think he was like, "Wow, you guys are like completely. Oh, I gotta play the next lick. Oh, it's already over." You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it wasn't like like the snapping didn't throw him off. I think the snapping was so good he wasn't expecting it to end up to be like in time, and then we all laughed about it, and then they played the song, and it sounded absolutely incredible. But I think, like I said, as a musician, I feel like that's kind of what happened. It may have happened, but to me, it just made the show even better. You know what I mean? Like that's
Mhm.
part of that connecting. Kind of not like reminds you that they're humans like us, but kind of in a way. Like like they're just having a good time like us. Like that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, I thought that was really cool. I had another thought to go along with that, but
Well, I while you come up with it, while you're talking about that, I think they really know how to capture and like feel like we are part of the experience.
mhm,
Like Silversun absolutely recognized like the audience part of a live performance. Like they are a band that really feels to love their fans a lot, whether it's through their social media pages, whether it's through their live performances themselves. Like they are relatively like simple
mhm.
people. It feels like, but they know they know what they're there for. They're there for a connection.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you perform live, you kind of it's not just like you can't just play a song, be like, thanks guys, and then play the next one, and then be like, thank you again, and then play the next one. Like you
Hmm.
got to connect, you got to talk. You kind of almost
Yeah,
got to be. You don't have to be a comedian, but you got to say stuff that like makes them laugh every once in a while. You know what I
you
mean?
got to
You
be
got to hang out
charming.
and have, yeah,
Like
exactly. You got to have some
charming is very
charisma.
helpful.
Exactly. There's an aspect of that. And like for me, I have that. I can do that pretty well when I'm doing like my solo sets. It's just my music. But like whenever I'm performing jazz, it's really hard for me because I always feel so like stoic when I'm doing like I just like turn into a different person. So I'm like I don't really know like what to say because it's just like a completely different persona.
Hmm.
But that's one thing like I was laughing my butt off too, like just all the stuff that Brian was saying in between the concert. Um so I guess like what we need. Oh, I forgot. I remember what I thought this is gonna say. What
What's
we
up?
need when I post this, we
Mhm.
need an essential Silver Sun pickups playlist made
Mm.
by Ty. So
Oh.
hopefully I'll have you work on that and we'll see if we can post it, link to this when I post this podcast. We'll post the link on like Spotify. I'll put one on YouTube as well. Just an essential Silver Sun pickups. If you're a fan of alternative rock, not even like if you're a fan of rock, sorry, yeah, just rock. This will be a playlist to kind of get you into them. And then that way, and until you can craft the playlist to show that like some of their best songs that they do live, kind of how their sound has like evolved through time.
Hmm.
Because that's what we really need to help, because that's what I should have listened to before this concert rather than Physical Thrills. Good
Yeah.
album still, but definitely if I had listened to that, I would have been more prepared.
Yeah. Again, physical thrills, its highs still hit on at least on the live performance end, still hit just as high as some of their older songs. But as a studio recorded album, it feels more just okay to good,
Yeah, it feels like yeah.
at its peaks. Whereas
Mhm.
something more classic like a Carnivus or a Swoon that really embodies that sound better, I would consider great.
Yeah, because even like Sticks and Stones that they performed, like I said, that was one of my favorite songs that they performed that night. And I had heard it on the album. I didn't recognize it because it sounded so different while they were performing it live. I didn't even
Hmm.
know. And like I listened to the album a couple of times,
Hmm.
but I was like, I didn't even know that they had performed that.
Yeah.
Um, that they had performed it. I'm trying to see if maybe who they used as a producer, and maybe if that's how it was different. So it looks like they used Butch Vig on Physical Thrills and on Widow's Weeds. But then on Better Nature, that's the one with Circadian Rhythm, and
Hmm.
that one was produced by Jackknife Lee. Now even Circadian Rhythm, like I said, I feel like it had more edge when they were performing it live than the recording necessarily did.
Hmm.
Um, and potentially maybe that's because of, like I said, all the energy in the room that just came. But I still feel like it had a little more edge, a little more intensity when they were performing it rather than the studio recording. Um,
Yeah.
do you think the producer may have? I'm wondering, like, did the producer? I'd have to go back to some of their older albums to see if like the producer like played a role in that. Because I don't know Butch Vig's style. and I don't really know Jackknife Lee's style either. So I'd have to see if
Yeah,
that kind of affects it.
that would be something. I know nothing. I know nothing really about the production history of their studio albums. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't know where that inspiration kind of comes from, if it's more themselves or if it's more based in the production.
Do you feel like because Widow's Weeds is the album they released in 2019, and that one
Mhm.
was also done by Butch Vig. Have you listened to that album before?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I really like Widow's Weeds
Okay, I was gonna say then
a
Physical
lot more
Thrills.
than Physical Thrills.
Do you feel like it's closer to Physical Thrills in the mellowed out nature, or it's closer to Swoon and the Neck of the Woods with the edgier, actual
It's
rock?
got more teeth to it.
More
It's
teeth.
got more
Okay.
teeth to it. I'd say that yeah, it's closer to the sound that they had captured before.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
But I don't think I've heard much played from that album live as anything
Widow's
else.
Weeds. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I guess the only way to know for sure would be if we asked them.
I,
So yeah, I mean, 'cause I'm just looking up some of the personnel. Because looks like Billy Bush was the mixer, Hepakadji was the mastering engineer. Um, yep, same people that worked on Widow's Weeds, Billy Bush and Hepakadji. So, and I was guessing that they probably did because usually a producer will kind of have his engineers that he likes to work with. So, all right, well, guess only time will tell. I guess do you have
Mhm.
any final thoughts about Physical Thrills versus? I guess the last question about Physical Thrills: if there's is there like a style of artist or style of rock that you think Physical Thrills would really appeal to? Like maybe not necessarily a Silversun Pickups fan, but like any other like rock bands out there that you think that it kind of reminds you of? Because like obviously I don't really know that many or enough to compare
Oh,
it to.
like specifically Physical Thrills or
Yeah,
the
because
group
like
as a whole?
specifically Physical Thrills, like this album, like it's not like a typical Silversun Pickups album because it's like a very different sound. But if you like, I don't know, some other kind of rock band, you might actually really enjoy this album. Kind of like the because it's got like again, it's mellowed out a little bit, a little more dreamier, a little more ethereal.
Um, you know, the only things that come to mind would be other bands um that remind me of their other sound, just a little more acoustic in its production.
Okay, a little more
Um,
acoustic records, yeah.
yeah, like I would say if you wanted a more acoustic Smashing Pumpkins,
Okay,
then you could go there. Or if you would like something a little bit more pop or folky inspired, My Bloody Valentine from
okay,
like a shoegaze kind of
shoegaze.
approach.
Okay,
Uh that's what I would say. But but again, if this is your first time experiencing this group, I wouldn't recommend Physical Thrills to go to because I think you would do yourself a disservice to their sound
yeah.
as like an entry point.
And perhaps this is their way of trying to appeal to other fans, like trying to broaden their fan base, or it could just
Mhm.
be trying out a new sound. Like I love experimenting
Mhm.
with different genres all the time. If you looked at my like 5 songs I released this year, you would think it's a completely different artist because it was like one was like a lo-fi track, the other one was like a pop ballad, the other one was like a throwback R&B, the other one was like
Mhm.
a mellow hip hop song. It's like sometimes musicians just they catch a vibe and they do it no matter how different it sounds. So,
Yeah,
um yeah, yeah. So still a great album. Still recommend checking it out. But if you have to choose between listening to the album or going to the concert, go to the concert.
go to the concert.
Hands down.
Even if you don't like
Hands down.
rock, go to the concert. You're going to get a great live performance.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And next week we have yet to determine the album that we're going to talk about. So feel free to send in a request.
Mhm.
But by next week we'll have something else to discuss. So thanks again for joining.
And until next time.